I'm going to give you a couple seconds as a preview to this episode, call it episode, with Dr. Marks. Dr. Steve Marks is now the new dean of Clemson. I just found out after we did our podcast interview that there's been a $16.5 million injection from a wonderful family that is going to get Clemson started. Very excited for Clemson University getting their veterinary school up and going. We talk a little bit about our allegiances to NC State and also Clemson and how you can actually have both. The reason I want to preview this slightly is because we jump right into the conversation without a great introduction. Dr. Marks is incredible, and you will learn that as you watch. We were talking a bit off the record, and I realized that, hey, we're getting into the information that I want to get recorded, and I had not hit the record button. So by the time I hit the record button, we're just jumping in and chatting along. So there's the intro as to why there is no real intro. And I hope you get something out of this, get to learn a lot. I learned a lot from Dr. Mark from this interview and from people I have known who knew him at NC State. I was lucky to have some really great folks at NC State, but I was not there. He came in afterwards, but I learned a lot about him and he's amazing. He is, I think, the best choice they could have made for Clemson. And I appreciate him giving me some time in his crazy schedule right now, getting the some RVS Peeler College of Veterinary Medicine and going. Off we go.
NC State's got they have a great faculty. I mean, they just do. I mean, they have, they have multiple specialists deep in each area, which most colleges don't. They've been fortunate to keep a lot of really good people, and they haven't all left to go to the private sector. So that says how good they are. So were you at NCVC this year?
Yeah, I try to go every year. It's usually the one place where I get to catch up with some classmates. I also
Yeah.
have two classmates that are usually speaking or somewhere in the NCVC. Andy Moorhead is he's in the Heartworm Society. He's a
Yeah.
parasitologist. He just came back to NC State, and
Yes.
and so you and I have a connection as you are the founding dean of Clemson, and you'll see I have Clemson, and some of my
Yeah.
folks are asking me, but you also have this NC State ring, and you were there for 9 years. How did you get Clemson on here? So my allegiance has always been I've always been an NC State guy. I love the Wolfpack, and I always will. But my son went to Clemson, and he just graduated in 24, and he played the trumpet down there, and it's just a different feeling. Those hills are pretty special. So we definitely try to go to a football game. We don't want to talk about this year because I will tell you the two games I went to were LSU
Yeah.
and Duke. So it has not been.
It's not been a great year. Although Friday night surprised a lot of people. So if they win one of the last two games, they'll remain bowl eligible. So that I think that's what people are they're clinging on to, that they don't break their bowl streak now. So
Yeah, and they need a bowl for those seniors. I mean, the year has been what it's been, but they all are really trying their best, and they've got some studs on defense. You just hate to see how are we getting 46 points scored on us from Duke. But that aside, I'm excited for Clemson for having you, and I've seen you everywhere getting everything ready, and now you've opened the doorway for people to apply to get into the program at Clemson for veterinary medicine. That is super exciting. How did you end up from NC State? I mean, I know they picked one of the greatest people because I've heard of your background from your teaching and how the
thank
students
you.
loved you.
Well, that's very kind of you. So you and I have a lot of similarities. So I loved NC State. I mean, I'll always love NC State. I mean, 18 years of my career was there. and it's a great program, and I think they turn out a very good product. But the other commonality we have is our son was a student athlete at Clemson, so we got to see, my wife and I got to see Clemson through the lens of a parent, and that really has an impact on you. And we all think our kids are great, and our son is, he's a very smart, very nice kid. But when he came to Clemson, he's a little bit self-absorbed with soccer, and Clemson really changed him. And they really, one of the foundations of Clemson is servant leadership, which we hope to instill in the veterinary students as well. And I haven't felt that same uh, vibe at other schools. This one is, like you say, there's something special in these hills. So when this opportunity came up, I was happy at NC State. I had no intention of leaving. I offered to help. And what I meant by help, that would be like, maybe I'll consult and help you develop your program. I didn't anticipate leaving NC State and coming here, but that's really what happened. Just a unique opportunity.
Grasping the opportunities when they occur. That's an important thing. Now, you have quite a lot of background. When you pulled you up originally, there's still some information. I think NC State kind of hopes you're still there. You're still on the NC State, and then you're also at Clemson. If you look at your bio, there's not only all of the distinguished student awards, the Norden Distinguished Teacher Award. So you have a great background in being able to convey and be in the classroom and teaching students. Now being administrative, are you going to miss a bit of being in contact with the students?
Yeah, I hope I'll still have, contact with them. I think it's important that uh, deans and associate deans and department chairs are still involved with students. Even as an associate dean at NC State, I still taught. I mean, my last year there, I was still teaching 100 hours, mostly lab teaching. So I don't want to give that up completely. It's just a different. It's a different. It's a different role. I think if you really want to change things, it's really hard to change things from being in the clinic and in the classroom. You have to step away and maybe be a little bit more of a conductor. Like, we've hired a lot of good people, and they know exactly what we're looking for. We want them to be student centric, and we really want them to focus on teaching. And that, at NC State, we tried to do that, but faculty had a lot of different roles, right? They had to do some scholarly activity, they had to do a lot of clinic duty. And sometimes when that became overwhelming, teaching, dropped to a lower priority. And that won't happen with us, because that everyone that has been hired knows that teaching and being student centric are top priorities. But yeah, I'll always miss the students. I mean, that's what makes academia special.
It sounds like you're going to be able to have a balance between doing all the administrative, but still keeping a little bit of that contact with the students, which is going to be important too. The the other thing is that you've been in multiple places. You were even at that other place that calls himself Death Valley. You were
Yes, we are.
you were at Tuskegee for a while. Is that right? So you've hit the
So I
map
went.
quite a bit.
Yeah, I have a very circuitous path. Um, because I went undergraduate to Texas A&M, but I went to veterinary school in Britain, and an American coming back from overseas to get an internship, was a challenge. And I did my internship at Tuskegee, which actually had a big it had a big influence on me to be, that was, it was a land grant, like Texas A&M, but it's an HBCU. So I really saw a different side of veterinary medicine. And then from there, Washington State for residency, and from there to Colorado State, Louisiana State, Illinois, and then NC State, and now here. And some of that's because my wife is also a veterinarian. We also have that in common, right? Because your wife is a veterinarian.
She is.
So
I
we
followed her down
we
here.
swapped around.
I followed her down here.
So, and where did she go to veterinary school?
Same NC State.
That's what I
Yep,
thought.
yep. She's a 94. I was a 97 model. So, um,
Yeah, so I think you understand what it's like to you make decisions for two professionals in your family. So some of the moves were Diane's choice and some were mine. And, whoever was the following spouse found a way to make it work, and we've been very fortunate.
I've read that you actually were veterinary trained in Britain. I thought that was really interesting. So you bring
Yeah, I
a
say,
lot of different views that have probably give you a great overview that'll put you in a wonderful position to do what you're doing, for one thing.
I hope that's true. I will tell you, I was one of those kids that read all the James Herriot books growing up. Our family was animal lovers. My dad, if he had had a choice, would have been a veterinarian, and he was one of the inspiring people for me. And when I went to Britain, I actually got to meet, James Herriot was a pseudonym, right? His name is
Right.
James White or Jim White. I actually got to meet him. He was retired, but I
Wow.
went to work for a practice in Thirsk. Well, I went to work for a practice in Settle, Yorkshire, which was not very far from Thirsk. And so I went to visit him. The typical American. I want to tell him how really how he inspired me. And then really all I got him to do was sign a book. But I do have a checkered background that I hope will help students see that there's not just one path.
I think that's awesome. One of the biggest challenges that has come about from the time I graduated in 97 through today was at one point after I graduated, there's a institute called Brackey Group or whatnot that is supposed to look forward and tell you, well, what's the outlook for economically and for the veterinary profession. And they were predicting that we would be oversupplied with veterinarians. This was
Yeah,
like in 2003 or something, which turned out to be a really bad predictor. And it flipped the other way around somewhere, maybe pandemic, I don't know. But I remember trying to hire veterinarians, and we used to have lots of applicants, and we're picking who we want. And the script flipped, and it's hard to find. Now, right now, we have a really good group, and I've got a new graduate who's doing amazing, having to learn a little bit about getting my dopamine hits, not from my patients doing the greatest, but from watching her get the urinary catheter in, and it's a different
yeah.
world. You talk about backing out a little bit and looking from a different perspective than being in the classroom. I'm doing more mentorship now, and it's hard for me to fight jumping in and just doing it and letting them do it.
That's the hardest part
But I'm getting
is
better
not
at it,
taking it.
and she's doing amazing. We have a couple of really great younger doctors. But to the point of South Carolina and Clemson in South Carolina having a veterinary school, we're having a few more to try to fill this now need for more veterinarians. And I know NC State was increasing their class size. One of the challenges that I got from one of my classmates that's inside the faculty world is potentially staffing the new facilities. So, what has been your thoughts on how many veterinary schools we're adding, how many students we're having, and the challenges in your world of staffing these, not just Clemson in specific, but the the places that are going to be training our next generation of veterinarians?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think anybody has good answers for that. I mean, even before there were newer veterinary schools, because now there's a lot of new schools in the pipeline. We've I would say for over a decade we've had some challenges attracting veterinarians into academia. The salary differential for academia versus the private sector is there's quite a difference. Um, so we've already had that problem, and now that you're adding all these veterinary schools, we're all competing against one another for good faculty. I think you just have to offer something a little bit different. So I think what we have that we're using a partially or a semi-distributed model. So the clinic duty will not be as much because we're gonna be partnering and our students will be trained in the workplace. So I think we're drawing some people that don't want to be on call, don't want to cut a colic in the middle of the night, don't want to be called in an emergency, and they want to focus on one aspect of what we do in academia. So I think that's the draw. Um, some of the other new schools have very similar draws. So I think Clemson um, is a name brand that helps. Some of the other universities that are opening colleges of veterinary medicine don't have the same name recognition. We are a land grant, so we're a public institution. Um, I think Clemson and a lot of people in South Carolina feel like Clemson should have had a veterinary school a long time ago. So that's helped us. In fact, there's some people that thought we did have a veterinary school because we're so similar to NC State and Georgia um, in this region. Mississippi State, Auburn. I mean, if you look at Auburn, they're very very similar to Clemson, but they have a veterinary school. So um, and then I've spent my career building teams and working closely with colleagues and training students, interns, and residents. And a lot of those people want to come back to academia. So it's uncommon for me to go into a practice where there's not at least someone I know or someone that knows someone that I worked with in my past. So that helps as well.
Well, I think Clemson will have a huge leg up on getting great faculty. I think it will be a challenge across the board from what I've heard just from a few people that I know that are in the faculty world. But yes, Clemson, my brother is actually a CEO of a civil engineer firm, and Clemson was considered a relatively small school when Austin was deciding between there and NC State and Virginia Tech were his top three. Um, and Clemson, of course, had the band program, which drew him, but they also were ranked really high in their program for engineering and civil engineering. And when my brother said, "Yeah, I hire a lot of folks from NC State, Virginia Tech, and Clemson," not just because geographically, but they really put out students that are ready to work. I mean, you have a lot of really good, not just the athletic program, but Clemson has a really good name for a lot of programs, business wise, everything. They've got a really strong reputation.
I think we do a good job. The undergraduate program here, I think, is very strong. Like you say, the College of Ag is strong. The College of Science is strong. Engineering is very strong. Um, so they have a lot of strengths here. And then, there's a migration south. Like if you look at the top schools right now that students want to attend, there's a shift from the East Coast to the Southeast. The number one out of state student at Clemson is from New Jersey, New York area. So there is a draw to kind of the Southern way of life, at least for college.
My wife grew up in New York until she was about 13 or 14, and then her dad was an IBM guy, and they moved him down to Cary. He went back once in February, her senior year of vet school, to AMC, and she nearly froze. And she said, "No, don't think I want to go back up there. The weather is horrendous. My bones don't work with that weather anymore."
No, it's true. I mean, I still have family in New York, New Jersey area. And when I go back, there's certain things that I miss, but I'm also reminded why I'm not going back. So it just depends on the time of your life as well.
I know she's not interested in going back unless it's the middle of the summer, maybe. Of all the areas that you have done, I know internal medicine's your specialty, but more so in emergency, what has been the biggest draw from you from a clinical perspective that you really loved in the clinical world? Do you like the things that come in that need your attention immediately in the high stress area?
Yeah, I'd say it's always a good question. I mean, at my core, I'm an internist, and I like the puzzle. I like chasing down, putting together pieces. Um, I think why I chose internal medicine because I really loved cardiology. I liked neurology. I kind of liked ophthalmology, and at the time, medicine gave me the most bandwidth. So I'm a pretty good cardiologist, as an internist, and I'm a pretty good oncologist as an internist. Not as good as a cardiologist, not as good as an oncologist, but it gave me the bandwidth if you didn't have those specialties that you could step in. So, other than surgery, I think internal medicine gives you the most breadth. Um, I like emergency because I like the adrenaline. The ICU is not as rewarding because those cases need your attention, but you're usually managing them for other clinicians. Emergency, that feeling of saving a life in that moment, uh, you get that adrenaline, that adrenal squeeze is rewarding. So the combination of medicine and emergency medicine is a good combination. It gives you a chance to think, but it's not dull. So I think I've had the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm glad there are people like you and one of my good friends and colleagues, Shannon Bass.
Oh yeah,
Those people who really enjoy the emergency stuff. I do it when they come in because I have to, not because I like to. And right now, internal medicine is our the most difficult specialty for us to get transferred to, at least in our Charlotte area, from all the folks that I know. I've been in this region since 1997, so I know enough folks that are having the same challenges. So we can get into neurology. We have some great surgical specialists, but our internal medicine world to get in down there is, I mean, you're out weeks right now. So talk to
yeah,
your internal
medicine or
medicine people. We need more. We need more of them.
yeah, I think that so medicine's I think medicine is like having internal medicine is like having a really good restaurant. Um, they don't turn the tables over quickly. And if you look at our caseload at NC State, the turnover was not, so getting a case in and getting them back out the door in medicine was the most challenging service. And what we started looking at least when I was hospital director, we started looking at hospitalized days rather than caseload. And hospitalized days in a medicine service usually outpace all the other specialties. And what that means is, you take five uh, complicated internal medicine cases into your hospital in one day, and then you have five the next day, and five the next day, and five the next day. You don't discharge those patients as quickly, so they don't go away. And that can be the case, but a lot of other specialties get them in and out the door a little bit quicker, and that's because they usually have maybe better defined problems. If a case ever comes to a specialty hospital and they don't know what it is and they don't know what name to put on it, it usually winds up on the medicine service.
Oh, yes.
And those are,
So I was one of those crazy students who enjoyed internal medicine. I liked the thinking that it made you do, that
yeah,
that system two in the thinking fast and slow situation. I enjoyed the problem solving. I actually took internal medicine twice. Once Shelley Vaden was my senior clinician, and the other one
that's great.
was Ed Brightsword.
Yeah, well,
Um,
you had two of the best, right? Um, but I did, what's challenging right now, I would just tell you this, I'm not sure everybody would agree. So a lot of the specialties are driven by procedures, right? So surgery is procedurally based, neurology, ophthalmology, dermatology, medicine. Our veterinary community has gotten so advanced and so good at what they do. A lot of the diagnostics are done before they're referred to an internist. And so what an internist really has to do is assimilate information. So you think about a case that you sent to an internist, there's a pretty good chance you've done laboratory data on it. You've probably already done radiographs. You've probably done ultrasound if you have the ability. You may have even done endoscopy. And then that case goes to an internist, and the internist and the client don't want to repeat every test because that's financially not viable. So what that internist has to do is sit down and put all the information together, and that is really expensive based on time. But the way most services generate revenue is on procedures. But medicine is it's a thinking sport. and it is really hard to pay enough money for someone to think, if that makes sense.
It does, and there are two things that I recall, especially from that last year. One was that Dr. Vaden and I had 5 Addisonian cases in 1 month.
Uh,
She said, one, you're never going to miss an Addisonian, most likely. But two, I'm a little afraid you're going to put everything on prednisone
Yeah,
because you don't see this many Addisonian cases in your lifetime, much less in 1 month. And one of them was an 11-year-old Italian Greyhound that belonged to a pathology residence. And she even had the test retested at NC State to make sure it was right because that one was so odd. The other one was a um, a case at NC State with Dr. Hess, where it was one of those things where the golden retriever had gone to surgery for a foreign body, but then when he tried to come out of anesthesia, something was wrong, something was off. And you were right, all the information was there, but they didn't know what's going on with this dog. Why is he not coming up? They didn't find the foreign body at all. If you looked at the history, it was straightforward. The owner saw him eat this, he had pizza. But when you looked at the lab work, Dr. Hess said, "What's wrong with this? This dog has no, stress leukogram. Why is his calcium a
yeah,
little high? Why is
yeah,
and so all the information was there, but he had to put it together, and that was one of the Addisonian cases. Was a 3-year-old golden retriever that obviously ate something, but
right,
the stress
right,
of surgery kicked him into the crisis, and he did absolutely fine. But having to think it through was where the internal medicine part kicked in, and it wasn't really. I mean, we did more tests to verify, but all the information was there. You just had to have the right mindset to put it together. Nothing against the group that the referring, because
right.
they're seeing X number of cases, and this is walking right down the path that you would do that. But because internal medicine, as you said, they don't take in as many cases because of the bandwidth they have to spend on each one.
No,
And
it's
then it
true.
layers up because you still got the ones that you're still working on when you're adding the new one. If you don't
Yeah,
take that
it's
into
a lot.
account, it'll burn your brain out.
Well, so you've mentioned three people that are outstanding clinicians, and they're challenged by those types of cases because the veterinarians have the average general practitioner has gotten so skilled in the last couple of decades. When they send cases in, they're never quick fixes. They're never easy, right? And you have somebody like Paul Hess who did internal medicine, obviously when you were there, and now primarily does oncology.
Oncology,
Shelley Vaden, internal medicine, but really now is a subspecialist in nephrology,
nephrology,
urology, right? Ed Brightsworth is probably, if not, he's probably the number one infectious disease clinician in the world. Um, he's been
especially tick-borne
he's
disease.
been promoting that for decades, that every disease could be infectious, right?
Yeah. So I appreciate that you have given me this time today. What is next on getting Clemson? When are the benchmarks? What's happening to get the class started? Where does that go?
Well, so our application portal opened October 9th, and it closes tonight, I think at midnight. And so there'll be, there's a kind of a crush to process those applications. So the way the accreditation process worked for Clemson is we were not able to use VEMCAS this year. So our team will have to process all the applications. Next year, we'll be on schedule to use VEMCAS, so everybody will apply through the central portal. So that's number one priority. We're still hiring faculty and staff, and those hires will match the curriculum, which is still being developed. I mean, we had to have a structured curriculum to get provisional accreditation, but now that'll be customized based on the faculty that we hire. And then students will be boots on the ground August of 26. So it's all happening, very, very quickly.
First class will graduate in the 2030.
Yes, sir. And then the first, we're using this semi or partially distributed clinical training model. So our students will be partnering with community veterinarians starting in May of 29. And then we also have, we'll also have some Clemson veterinary services. We have the Clemson farms that will service. We'll have a large animal ambulatory service to go out into the community. And then we've also are creating a very small community practice, but that will be limited to financially challenged clients.
That's great. We had something that Dr. Ford did with us when we were third years, where we would go to shelters and try to figure out from the folks that were working at the shelter which ones we could do stuff with to give them the best chance to help. You learned a lot, and you got to do a lot of good, especially for pets that maybe didn't have a great chance, and we upped it quite a bit. And that gave you a great feeling as a third year student that all the studying that you were doing, you were getting there, you were able to apply it a little bit. And I just saw that Dr. Ford was still speaking on vaccines, and he was at NC State, and he's still going.
Yeah, he's again, it's interesting. I'm sure you recognize how fortunate you are, but you had a who's who of veterinary educators when you were a student there, and Dr. Ford is a legend, and he's still out there. I mean, he helped develop most of the vaccine protocols that most of us take for granted. And he's also been involved in the Air Force. He's a true servant leader. So he had a big role in my career as I was developing as a young faculty member. So I appreciate him.
He was one of the ones that the first time you met him, he reminded me of one of my great uncles that you knew by the way he was put together that you didn't have to guess he had military in his background. He was going
Yeah,
to
that's
stand a
right.
certain way. I would imagine if you knocked on his door at 5 a.m., he was going to be put together and you could bounce a quarter off the bed made, you know?
I'm sure that's right. He's a great role model, and he's that course that you had at the shelter was a course I taught that with him when I started at NC State, and then when he retired, I took that course over. So he had a big impact on who I've become in many ways.
One of the scariest things was it was interesting, and I don't even know if I should record say this out loud. It's kind of crazy. But the shelter was not allowed to have real sedatives. They basically had pentobarbital for euthanasia. And there was this one chow puppy there is probably about 10 months old that they had been in some situation and ended up at the shelter. They had one of those pinch collars in him that had dug into the skin, but the puppy kept growing. So it was embedded all the way around. And it was cruel to try to remove it without some form of sedation. And Dr. Ford goes, "Well, this is all we got, guys." And he diluted and figured out some dose for euthanasia solution as a sedative and said, "This is super risky." But it actually worked out and we got that thing out. And we found out later on, like a month later, that the puppy looked completely different. He was clipped and bathed and got a great new home and everything. But that was walking on eggshells. And nowadays we wouldn't have to do things that way. But that's, that's what happens 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, he was someone that could adapt to any situation, which is, that is not an easy skill.
Well, I know that I've seen on LinkedIn that you are everywhere doing everything, and the college is expanding, and the construction vehicles are in and working on getting things going. So I know you have a fully packed schedule, and I want to just thank you for being here with me and giving me a little bit of your time. My Toastmasters group and some folks in the veterinary world will appreciate getting this update. And I have at least one staff member, one doctor who trained on you who will be very happy to see your face. Dr.
Well, that's very
Stroud,
nice
she
of you.
was a
Thank you.
student there. She's been
Oh
with us.
yeah, of course.
Yep, she came to us right out of NC State, and now she's one of the highly sought after doctors that all the clients love at Poplar Animal Hospital.
That's great. And what tell me what is your son doing with now that he graduated from
He's a
Clemson?
civil engineer with McAdams in Charlotte. So he lives down about 25 minutes away from me. So we get to hang out together and play a little golf. We played golf yesterday.
Oh, that's
I
great.
don't know if you can call what I did playing golf, but we had fun and we were outside swinging a club in 75-degree the weather on in November 16th.
Yeah,
You
you
can't
can't
get any
beat
better
that,
than
right?
that.
No. Well, the next time you're in Tiger Town, we need to make sure we hook up. We'd love to see it. I'll have a little bit more to show you when you come to town.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Thank you so
Well, thanks so
much.
much for taking the time. Yeah, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.